So next to me, there's Stephen Dunbar-Johnson from the New York Times, and you're responsible for the international business of the New York Times, located in London, as you just told me. So it's quite a tough business because, as far as I see, you have like 4 challenges. The media business totally turned upside down. There's political pressure. Then you have an international market, and the way of storytelling is totally different. So you have to be available with the New York Times on like any platform. So congratulations. How do you face that?
Well, that's an interesting and tough question. 4 challenges in one question. I actually see them as 4 opportunities in one question. The New York Times, I don't know whether you know this, but the New York Times put up a paywall in 2011. And at that time, we put up a paywall because we felt that it was going to be essential for us to get our readers to pay for content, and that our survival, our ability to sustain our mission, and our mission is to maintain a bureau of 1,450 women and men producing news for us around the world. It was going to be really important that we got people to pay for that content. And why is because we began to see that the old model, the analog model of where journalism was funded through advertising, was going to become increasingly difficult, because of the digital model where you needed great scale and you were getting cents for dollars instead of dollars, was going to be challenging for us. But back then we felt that advertising would continue to play a very significant role, but that if we could also gain subscription revenue, that would really help us. If you fast forward now to where we are today in 2018, we really have crystallized our thinking that it is essential to get people to pay for quality journalism, and that the advertising market has fractured to such an extent that if we hadn't put in place that pay model, then we would be in serious trouble as a business, and we would be struggling to sustain the news mission that is the whole ethos of the New York Times.
But talking about scale, is going international then the key to survive, to scale the business model? Because maybe it's a different if you want to sell your product just in the US to a fragmented media market.
Yeah. I mean, the New York Times has always been, in terms of its content, very internationally facing. We have, I mentioned earlier on the stage, we reported last year out of 160 countries. We have well over 70 foreign correspondents around the world. We're increasing our bureaus around the world, not retrenching. And we're doing that for a number of reasons. One, we think it's vital to inform our audience in the United States, but also because we see that there's an increasing number of people around the world that want high quality independent media without fear or favor journalism that we provide. And so on any given month today, we have around 150 million people coming to our digital platforms from around the world, of which most months there's about 27% of that audience is from outside of the United States. And that is, doing the math very quickly in my head, that's roughly 38 to 40 million people coming to the New York Times from outside of the United States. So there is a tremendous opportunity there, and to try and answer your question, in a digital world, we believe, yes, that we're going to have to become more expansive internationally, but and we are. I mean, we're being. I'm not sure I'm allowed to give the number of digital subscribers we have outside of the United States, but it
stays among us.
It's around about it's around about 12% of the total at the moment, and as I said earlier on stage, we have 2.9 million digital subscribers now. So we have over $1 billion of subscription revenue, which is quite good.
One is the business model, but the other way is the structure, the infrastructure for you as a media company to go international, to scale that business model. Yeah. And so you mentioned that you're not located in New York, in that beautiful building in Manhattan, but you're located in London, and you're also thinking about having more offices, or you also have an office in Hong Kong.
I'm based in London. That's where I pay my tax, unfortunately. But I travel a lot. I'm on average a week a month in New York. We have a very large hub in Hong Kong, and we have we have a large international presence.
Yeah,
and
but to structure this internationally. So what about do you work like a startup or like a digital team, or like everyone's on Slack and exchanging messages to each other, or are you still having one newsroom where everything is located centralized, or how do you work?
Well, a little bit of both. I mean, so we have, when the sun rises in the east, Hong Kong takes control of the website. And we have a big team there who are looking after the site and editing and curating the site. As the sun moves to Europe, we turn on in London, and the team there are handling they've got the keys to the cupboard, and then it moves back to the States. So it's a 24/7 operation that is very digitally facing. But your question is a complex one, because that's the production of the news and making sure that we're across all of our digital platforms in a relevant way. But we also have reporters all over the world who are reporting in different ways now. And this is a great thing about technology, is that they're thinking about audio, they're thinking about video, they're thinking about how we can, social media platforms, so we can amplify the stories and get it out. And one of the things that I think is we don't talk enough about, and I regret not saying a bit more about this in my earlier comments, is that today storytelling, good journalism, technology is enabling us to tell journalism in a really powerful way, so that you can be reading a story about a young girl in a refugee camp in the Middle East or in Africa, in a magazine format, and then you can now have a downloaded VR experience where you, halfway through the article, you're prompted to look at your VR experience, and you're suddenly in the camp with the girl. You are in her shoes, walking around the camp, or you have drone footage of a situation. So the combination of technology and great journalism, great storytelling, and how they work together today is amazing. And I think the use of graphics on our site, so to draw readers in, and particularly young readers, is technology is gives us lots of tools in ways to engage people, which are essential today.
Yeah. It sounds like, was there a moment in the past where you thought about being a platform, not to produce the content as the New York Times, but more like to invite local newspapers, local publishing houses to produce New York Times certified content or similar content on your platform, within your business model, within your paywall, within all the technical infrastructure to scale the business model on a faster way, and not to invent journalism on a local base?
So the short answer to that is no, we haven't spoken internally about that seriously or in any great depth. The longer answer is that it's something that I think is very interesting. And there are one or two of my colleagues have been kicking the tires on just that. Where it goes, I don't know, but I think it's a very interesting idea.
Yeah, because when I see German publishing houses, for instance, they try to imitate your paywalls, they try to imitate other business models on their platform. They really have problems to deliver their content on digital platforms and at the same time monetize these content, because the German language is just too small to make money with it. You can scale it.
Question and from some people in Asia recently who asked me exactly that question. They think that they have the same problem in the Asian markets. So I was talking to some Japanese partners of ours, and they were talking about just that, about the New York Times as a platform to aggregate other media. And I think it's quite an interesting idea.
Yeah, but it would be an alternative business model. So on the one hand side, you had the New York Times as the content, and otherwise you could license your infrastructure.
And I think you make a very interesting point for a number of reasons, because the bulk of our initiatives and our work is about how to get people to subscribe to the core New York Times site. And I think that is our priority. However, we see that there are lots of other segments of content which we can package and monetize effectively. If you look at the success of our cooking app, we've had really built quite an interesting subscription business out of our cooking app. A crossword app is doing extraordinarily well as well.
Sometimes the easiest things work best.
Sometimes the easiest thing work best. I mean, but it all actually boils down to creating great content. Our podcast, The Daily, has had over 300 million downloads now, and it's become incredibly successful, and it's allowing us to believe that yes, there are other opportunities in audio. We're looking at a weekly TV show now as well. So if you can produce and invest in great content, and the way to do that is by having lots of people subscribe to you, so it's a nice positive cycle, then you can start. As long as you've got great content, you can start thinking about how you can package it in different ways that work across multiple platforms in ways that excite readers young and old. And the great thing we've found about The Daily, the podcast, is that the demographic of readers, it's exposed the New York Times to a whole new generation of readers, much younger, much more skewed to female, which is fantastic for us. So, I mean, I think that's the really exciting thing about technology today.
There's one more challenge, and the challenge is the trust into journalism, and I think you have a special role in that field. So, what is the situation right now for the New York Times talking about this?
Well, I gave a rather dystopian speech, nay lecture, on the stage earlier, and it was a little grim and intentionally so, because. You know, on the one hand, you've got the New York Times, and I think the New York Times is going to be okay for all the reasons we've said. But if you believe that you need a plurality of views, a broad church of views and opinion for democracy to be successful, I mean, I'm going to sound quite pompous here, but I genuinely believe that for people to be well educated and to ask the right questions of government and of business, of people in power and authority, you need to have a successful, free and independent media. If you believe that, you should be worried today, because the business model that sustained journalism has traditionally been the lifeblood, the advertising, is draining away because the platforms are sucking it all up. Not because the platforms are intentionally trying to kill us, it's just that they've got a very effective business model. So that's happening on the one hand. And on the other hand, you've got the rise of autocratic regimes around the world who are making it very difficult and very dangerous to do good journalism around the world. And we just saw last week the incredibly brutal murder of Jamal Khashoggi. That same weekend, there was a journalist in Bulgaria who was raped and murdered. We've had over 90 journalists killed in over the last year. We have over 260 journalists in prison at the moment. And it's not just journalists who are in war zones that are being killed. It's journalists that are doing investigative reporting. Even in Malta, in the EU, we had a journalist killed not so long ago. So it's an expensive business to do good journalism, and it's increasingly a dangerous business to do good journalism, and it's particularly dangerous for women journalists, who are not only in danger, but they're also abused around the world. So we have this is a bleak story I'm giving here, but it is something that I think we've taken for granted the free and open press in the Occidental world, in the developed world, for some time, and I think we need to wake up and see what's happening around the world. And if you believe, as I do, and I think a lot of people do, that you need to read broadly and be not just the New York Times, read other publications as well to understand what's happening and come to your own judgment about what's going on. And I think that's really important.
So is it more like journalists and publishing houses should stay together, stand next to each other, or should they collaborate in a way we just mentioned before in terms of networks?
Yeah, I mean, we've been doing some work with UNESCO about creating a coalition of publication news organizations where we're standing up for each other and supporting each other. Very recently in Hong Kong, a journalist called Victor Mallet, who works for the Financial Times, he had his visa revoked in Hong Kong, which has traditionally been a place where you can practice without fear or favor journalism very well. It's been a great place to have a media business. We have a big hub there, as you know, the Financial Times, the Wall Street Journal, CNN, they all have big bases there. But that sends a very, very difficult message out that they're not, and the reason why they're not renewing his visa is because he sat on a panel, a little like us now, but with a member of the opposition. Just for sitting on a panel and with a member of the opposition, his visa is being revoked. That's pretty worrying.
Yeah, it is. So now we have the dystopia. We have a tough situation in building business models. You told us opportunities and challenges at the same way. But for the moment, thanks for being my guest here at the Medientage München. I hope you enjoy the next days with discussions and talks with some colleagues from the media landscape. And I hope you have some questions also in the comment section here. And maybe you should try out the New York Times paywall. It is quite easy to go through. I just tested as well. And thanks for being my guest. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time. Thank you.